Um, Welcome, super fans, to our discussion of the feminine mystique. I am Sam. I work here at the library. I'm joined this evening by my coworker Sean. So we wanted to talk to each other mostly about the same thing that we talk to each other about all the time. We wanted to talk about super lady hits and misses in TV and movies. So, Sean, just to get us rolling, what are some of your favorite hits and misses so far as character adaptations into movies and film?
Well, of course, you have to mention Patty Jenkins as Wonder Woman because I thought she did a fantastic job on that movie. Really, I think the only flaw of it was I didn't really care for the casting of Ares, but that was one flaw in a movie that I think even the studio was banking on failing. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, the recent Birds of Prey movie I thought was uh, really charming, and I thought it was the movie that I had wanted Suicide Squad to be. And I helped that I think Margot Robbie was also producing the movie, so she got some creative input in how the character was portrayed.
Right. I adored Birds of Prey. I thought I read a lot of reviews that were kind of hateful about the non-linear structure to it, which is really common in like heist movies. And I really liked the non-linear structure of it because I felt like the whole take home of the film was about like how her experience as someone dealing with mental health disruptions, like that her experience is not linear. And so I super loved that. I thought that that was captured really well. And then when I read reviews and that was the thing that people hated, I was like, oh, I was wrong. I don't think things right. Um, so on that track, we've got Suicide Squad 2 coming up. So what are your thoughts with it?
I have high hopes. I'm not as big a James Gunn fan as my contemporaries seem to be, but I love the cast. Pete Davidson is really a good film actor. I don't know if you've ever seen him outside of SNL, but I look forward to seeing what he does with the role. I don't think it could be less of a mess than the first Suicide Squad. So the expectations, I think, are low enough that it's easy to clear. Um,
I super love James Gunn's work in Guardians of the Galaxy. I'm one of those people that just like totally wrapped into that. I don't usually get into team movies, but I really love what they did with Guardians, and I thought the Guardians 2 was a good follow up. It wasn't like a campy, slapsticky humor kind of sequel, which lots of times they are. And I hate it when a superhero sequel is just camp or like for instance when they reinvented Hellboy recently, super not into that. That was that was sad. That was very sad, but I do love Pete Davidson. He's also he's super an advocate, so I follow him on like every social media outlet that he will participate in from time to time. And I love that he is so open about mental illness and recovery. And that's something that I think. So later we're going to talk about Captain Marvel and why everybody hates Brie Larson. But I super love Pete Davidson's openness and using that kind of platform as an advocate for, you know, just just being human beings. And I really appreciate that. And I'm interested to see what he's like in that. I've watched some of his other movies and they hit close to home. He can really make you cry if he wants to. And for a comedian, I super appreciate that. I am actively not watching trailers for Suicide Squad 2 because the trailers for Suicide Squad was the movie. Like it was just like a cut slash of everything except walking scenes was in those trailers, and it felt like I was just watching a really long trailer because of how much I had seen, and I was also really disappointed that they cut out so much of the Jared Leto stuff. Um, so I am not preparing for Suicide Squad 2 whatsoever. Um, so I think that my favorite hits and misses. Okay, so I super do not like Jennifer Lawrence as Mystique.
Mm.
Mystique is my favorite character probably ever written, and I have a super big problem with them reinventing her as America's sweetheart.
Mm.
And I don't like it. It's too cuddly, and it's not about that. Like Mystique is not about being cuddly and sweet and your next door neighbor and you know Charles's little side pet. I hate it. I hate it. But I think right now in this chair, my favorite adaptation into film so far has been Gal Gadot. Gadot, the new Wonder Woman.
Yeah. Mm.
I'm about it. I'm super about it. I like that they picked someone with a strong accent. And I just really liked how they invented her whole backstory. Like, I love that they gave us that. In the comics, Wonder Woman her backstory just kind of got like lost somewhere. Like sometimes you would have an entire line of a series that was all about her backstory, but it was just really disjointed because her like experience in the modern day world just had no bearing whatsoever on her backstory stuff. And so I really liked what they did with this one. I'm really interested to see what they do with 1984.
Well, Wonder Woman, I think she's, in one way, she's kind of similar to Superman in the sense that she is a hard character to crack if you focus too much on what she can do. And there was the DC game Injustice: Gods Among Us that recently became available for free on the PS4. And the story was really well done, but they did not handle Wonder Woman. Like every scene that she's in, she keeps getting beaten up and kicked out of the fight until she finally gets to her chapter way at the end of the storyline. And it was like they didn't know what to do with her. And I thought Patty Jenkins, I was actually very happy that we have not had a Wonder Woman movie until Patty Jenkins, because I'm glad that they got it right.
Yeah.
And I think in other hands, they would not have done it correctly.
I support that. So another fairly recent one that I wanted to riff with you about, I wanted to talk about Dark Phoenix. So we've seen that storyline before. And while I super love Sansa Stark, and I love her at everything that she does, that movie was the worst performing box office opening weekend of any X-Men movie ever, which is tragic. And I was wondering what you thought about, do you think that Dark Phoenix or X3 did that story better?
Honestly, I think Dark Phoenix told the Phoenix story better, whereas X3 tried to skip to the Dark Phoenix portion and cram it in half the movie while we have this Magneto plot. I saw Dark Phoenix, and the good news was I didn't hate it. The bad news was that was the good news. And it suffers part of the fact that the X-Men franchise, as it exists in film, it's been a dead horse for several movies. And it's like, just put them in the MCU or do something else with them, but quit trying to relive what worked before and isn't working for you now.
So you're not about the whole First Class set?
I liked it to a point, but I got tired of it. I really just wanted to go back and see the Patrick Stewart Xavier cast. And I really liked James Marsden as Cyclops, and I know a lot of people didn't, but I thought he brought a personality to the character, which is a step up from how he's usually portrayed. Yeah. And Famke Janssen, I don't think really got to show off her range as an actress through that entire trilogy.
Yeah, I feel like, so I super love that first trilogy. My biggest issue with the X-Men movies in general is that there is this really compelling story of how Nightcrawler comes to be, right? So, fun story about my life. When First Class came out, I was working in a movie theater, right? And I would sneak in and watch that movie like over and over and over again. And I would try to catch, like, are they going to talk about it? There's Azazel. Are we going to talk about it? Are we going to talk about it for real? Because in X2, there's this really beautiful moment where Nightcrawler and Mystique are like staring out over a lake, and they're having this, and it would be perfect. And I'm holding on, and I'm ready. Like, are we going to talk about it? And they don't. And in First Class, they didn't. And then in Apocalypse, they didn't. And then in Dark Phoenix, Mystique dies. And so it will never be talked about. And that hurts me. It hurts me deeply. And what I didn't realize, so a lot of us get into these movies and stuff because, like, we learn early on about comic books and graphic novels. But now that they're on this like mass consumable platform, people kind of go the opposite way. Like, they see the movies and then they go and read the books, as opposed to how a lot of us come into it, which is like we read the books and then the movies come out and we're crunk and we stay for the after credits, and like we're those people. And so I was talking to some people recently about how frustrated I was with them killing Mystique, because now it's never going to happen. And I would say a strong, like 8 out of 10 people that I talked to didn't realize, spoilers, that Mystique is Nightcrawler's mother. And I think it's such a disservice to these popular audiences who are consuming this now to not talk about that. I think it's such a disservice to not have representation for, like, we've seen the story over and over and over again, and they even gave it to us in X-Men about fathers that don't work out, fathers that walk out, and then they meet you when you're an adult, and like maybe you play catch, and it's a whole thing. But like, they won't touch it with Mystique and Nightcrawler, and that pains me. Like, it's an obsession.
Have you ever watched the 90s animated series of X-Men?
Oh, yes.
What did you think about I think it was like a 4th season episode where they finally addressed it?
I thought that they handled it really well there. Honestly, maybe it's because I'm in like a YA mode lately, but I think my absolute favorite handling of it happened in X-Men Evolution. Did you watch that one?
I haven't seen that one.
Okay, so in X-Men Evolution, they're teenagers, like, coming to the school or whatever, and it talks about not only that relationship, but it also kind of touches on this like foster mom thing that Mystique picks up with Rogue later on. And I thought that they handled it really well. I feel like that whole era of 90s cartoons, they did such a great job, but unfortunately, I am a 90s child. So I am now watching these things as an adult and like putting together the like political inferences and stuff that's happening, and it's fantastic, and it's all I do in my downtime. Right now I'm rewatching Gargoyles because it's on Disney Plus, and just like starting that from the beginning and working on. And my partner, doesn't actively engage in these things, but you appreciate each other's hobbies. And he was watching, just passing through the room, and he was like, I didn't know that Mystique was in Gargoyles, because Mystique and Demona are drawn like the exact same way and the same color scheme and everything else. And I think that that's definitely a nod to how those two characters are super similar. And like, I would love to just get in the brain of the people who created those shows and be like, were you making the connection, or like, am I just hunting for one?
Well, this is an interesting topic that came up recently. I was talking to someone. There are other shapeshifters in the X-Men series. Several of them are male shapeshifters. They don't catch on the way Mystique does. Is there something about having it be a female character that causes people to connect with it more strongly?
I think so. So here is my breakthrough theory that has probably been thought of before, but I like it. So I think that most female villains are given these like inertly female qualities that are their villain like source of power, and I think that that's something that happens across like MCU. I think it happens in DC Comics. I think that it happens everywhere. So like just for a couple of examples, like Poison Ivy, when she's first written into the comics, um she starts out as a assistant, right? She is a lab assistant who she like falls for this older man, and like maybe he's married or something, and he's trying to put together some botany experiments, and ultimately her punishment for being involved with a man like outside of wedlock is that he uses her as like his experiment, right? And like that's how Poison Ivy gets her powers in the original comics. And in that particular case, it's like you punish the woman for, you know, stepping outside of her role, but also let's give her a superpower that's super adorable and like still appropriate, like gardening. Like her superpower is super gardening. And I think that a lot of Batman villains are pretty like on the nose about they're kind of like the seven deadlies in their characterizations and stuff, because you see it with Catwoman too. Like what's the most womany thing that we can think of? An adorable cat, you know? Or with Mystique, I think that the shape-shifting thing caught on so well in the comics. So when she first comes out, it's like in real-time America, it's like the Cold War, right? So people are super obsessed about like, I have to know your identity, and like I need to know exactly who you are and that I can trust you. And in the comics, some of her first introductions, she takes the place of like senators, you know, newspaper owners and stuff like that. And so the main issue that people get really stuck on is that she's posing as men of power. And I think that later, as she develops and like as, you know, politics and understandings of gender dynamics kind of develop, that Mystique turns into this kind of thing where the reason that she's a villain is that you never know who she is, and she can pose as a man without earning being a man. And I think that over time we just kind of interpret that differently, but I definitely think that it has something to do because what's the X-Men character? He was in the very first X-Men animated series episode, and I don't
Morph.
think Morph. And like Morph was so bland. That was that was the white rice of X-Men. But yeah, I think that a lot of those characterizations and superpowers and stuff, they're not going to work as well with men. You know, I super give a nod to Black Panther when I talk about Catwoman, because it can't be just like a regular cat. It's got to be a panther. You know? Like if it's going to be a cat, it better be a manly cat. A trend that I've kind of noticed with some things, and I guess the X-Men reboots kind of touch it too. What do you think of this trend where they reimagine these common stories, but everybody is kids? Like, they do it in First Class, like everybody's, you know, these characters that we're used to seeing as like Ian McClellan and Patrick Stewart, now they're young guys. And in Gotham, the entire premise of Gotham is like everybody is teenagers and they're dealing with crime, but like this is how we're going to develop. How do you read that?
It's a couple of different factors. I mean, I think there of course is the element of Hollywood likes you to be young and pretty. So if we're going to keep de-aging you and retelling these stories, for something like Batman, there's a status quo. We know his parents get shot, and then he becomes Batman, and then it's a series of somebody breaks out of Arkham, does something, and goes back to Arkham, and we don't really ever get past that point in Gotham unless we're like, okay, we're going to end our series and then turn it over to somebody else to tell the origin again.
How do you feel about it, like, in regards to the female characters? Because I feel like a lot of the female characters that we've seen in Batman movies, they kind of, like in Batman Forever, right? You get to kind of see what happens to Poison Ivy happen to her, and in the Tim Burton one, you get to see what happens to Catwoman happen to her as an adult. And I don't know, I feel like I get kind of irritated with showing them as children in Gotham, like showing Ivy and Catwoman and Firefly even, and showing them as these characters that kind of like don't have backgrounds. Like, for example, I just read Harley Quinn Breaking Glass. And in that one, she's a teenager, but she's already in her kind of black and red costumes, and like she's got her bat, and like she's a little kooky and stuff. But she's a teenager and she's in high school, and she goes to live with a relative, but she gets there and the relative doesn't live there anymore, but there's this like happy little drag queen that takes her in, and I kind of hate it because one thing that I adore about Harley Quinn is her walking around town identity as Dr. Quinzel. And I feel like kind of showing them as teenagers that already have it kind of denies them the journey. Like it denies the trauma, the abuse, the everything else that turns her from this like buttoned up, you know, wears a bun, looks kind of like a librarian, and like very suddenly she's Harley Quinn. And I hate that. I hate taking that story away. That's the most compelling part of it. That's the teach you a lesson part.
Well, and that was one of the things that I did love about Margot Robbie's Harley Quinn is that this is somebody who was a clinical psychiatrist or psychologist, and those elements do creep back into her character periodically.
I loved that in Birds of Prey. I loved it so much. Like when she was breaking it down for the kid, like, this is a narcissistic personality. I was like, yes.
Well, then, like when you sent me just your thoughts in writing, I kind of went through and I was like, every time we get to, okay, what is the explanation that's kind of the problematic issue here? I circled it. And the thing that I noticed came up with a lot of these female figures, they get their story from men.
Yes, like, they do.
That is actually one of the things that I did not like about the Michelle Pfeiffer Catwoman, because something had to be done to her instead of, maybe she just always had that anarchic spirit in her, you know, that, because other Catwomen, like in the Arkham Asylum games, she enjoys it. Yeah. And I think that's a stronger approach to just the personality of her character.
So when I was reading up, because I got to thinking, like, I'm typing away, you know, I'm keyboard warrioring it, and I'm thinking, you know, her story, and I'm thinking of the Michelle Pfeiffer, I'm thinking of the Halle Berry, I'm thinking of the Selena Kyle in Gotham, and I'm thinking about the comics, and I couldn't put my finger on, like, what story do we accept now is her background story? And it actually turned out that the closest thing to her story was the Selena Kyle in Gotham. Like, that was the closest consensus that people could come to, was that Selena Kyle grows up poor, like her parents are inaccessible for one reason or another. Like, sometimes they're dead, most of the time they're just addicts. And she grows up kind of seeing the systemic issues in Gotham that are because of these like white men of power. And I really live for that in the Gotham series, because it is very much about like, this town is crooked. It is not the superhero's fault. It is not the supervillain's fault. It is the crime boss's fault. And that was what I was kind of reading more often than anything, was that her developing these like Aladdin level street kid things, it was always there. And she uses it as like, it's very intentional when she's an adult that like, I'm going to take a peg out of these guys' book, you know. And that was probably the only thing about Gotham that I super liked. Now I do have to say though that I love Gotham. Like I watched Gotham start to finish. It probably took me a little over 2 months, which is bothersome because of how much of it there was. And I mean, I was watching it on my lunch breaks, like everything. And then as soon as it was over, like I turned to the person that lives with me and I was like, hey, do you want to watch Gotham? And they were like, I don't know about this. And so I was like, okay, well, let's just watch the first episode. And after the first episode, they were like, oh, this is a cop show. And I was like, okay, well, let's watch 3 more episodes and then you can form your opinion. And, you know, it ended with me watching Gotham again by myself, and I feel good about that. I feel good about that decision.
I'm getting a call from the fiction desk.
They know better. Yeah. Reject them. Speaking of things that we binge and watch until we're sick of them, Umbrella Academy.
I know Kristen, who's the person who set up the festival, she absolutely loves that series. I have never seen it.
Did you read it?
No.
Okay, well, we have it. It's actually like 3 feet from where we're sitting right now.
That's probably what that phone call was about. It's like, she's going to ask about Umbrella.
Yeah, so this year for Christmas, because I'm spoiled, I got all of the Umbrella Academy books, and I also got all of the Coheed and Cambria comics. And they're fantastic. Again, read them until I was sick, started over and did it again. So with Umbrella Academy, are you familiar with the plot line, or like you want me to break it down for you?
Go ahead and break it down.
All right, I'm ready. So, all right, so Umbrella Academy, there's like 43 women or something like that. I have it written down, but anyway. All of these women across the planet have no signs of being pregnant, and then very suddenly they go into labor. Like, not even like your usual sci-fi, like your stomach just gets big. Like, no, like baby. And several of those babies get adopted by Reginald Hargreaves, right? He's somewhere between the guy on the Monopoly box and Alfred, but also kind of penguin-y sometimes. And so they get adopted, and most of them have these like super things that they can do just like right off the bat, right? I forget what Space Boy's thing is before he gets sent to the moon, but you have one who can channel this like demon-y tentacles thing that's never super talked about because he passes early on. And there's another who can like jump through, he can teleport and like later works that into time stuff. The 2 characters that I'm really concerned with, one is the rumor, right? And the rumor's deal is that when she tells you something like a rumor, you accept it as fact. Like, that is facts now. So I could say to you, Sean, you were a bird, and then you would start looking for birdseed, right? And the other character is Astro Boy, and in the graphic novels, they kind of hint at like there's a little bit of romantic interest here, but in the show, there's like a full-on dance number. Like it's a thing, and I feel weird about it. I feel weird about it because I feel like so these children are raised all the way to adulthood as siblings, as a super team, and I don't feel good about making two of those foster children a love interest. Like, I feel icky about that. I don't. So it either says one of two things. It either says it's cool to groove on your siblings, or it says that adopted families don't really count. Neither is good. And I don't know. I'm just not about it.
Did the showrunners not anticipate that there was going to be a negative reaction to this either way? Or?
I don't know. In other discussions, I've brought this up with people, and I'm like, so which is it? Like, do non-nuclear families not count? Or like, is it cool to get down with your siblings? And when I say that to people, they're like, why can't you enjoy television? But I can't, Sean. I can't.
Well, see, I just found out that I need to turn on the chat, so I did that, and we got a comment from Marie, who's been with us through the whole panel, who says that was deep. I'm assuming she's talking to you, not me. Thank you for that. I apologize if anybody else has made a comment that I am not aware has been up, but it's on now, so. Well, go ahead.
So, turning back to X-Men for just like a hot second, and then I'm done with X-Men, I promise. New Mutants. So it got kind of pushed around. The release date just got juggled here, there, and everywhere. And then COVID. So like no movies. Have you seen trailers for New Mutants?
I saw like one of the earliest ones where it was just kind of a teaser.
Yeah.
Okay, it's in this world. It's characters that I don't know, and I'm sure it's going to be good, but I just can't really work up the energy to care.
Yeah, I know you were saying that like you're kind of burnt on X-Men. Honestly, like there are never enough X-Men movies for me. Not until we talk about the blue elephant in the room. But with New Mutants, it seems like they're spinning it as like a horror movie, and I'm wondering if they're going to go a similar level that they did with Logan, because that was really well received. But I don't think that there are any characters that are familiar enough for people to get enthusiastic about it. Like, I feel like you're not enthusiastic about it because, like, you know, you grow up, you're a little kid, you're playing with a towel, like safety pin, and like you're somebody, you know, like you're watching TV. I'm the Red Ranger, you know, and I don't think there's any like identifiable characters that they've shown me in New Mutants that I can like super get behind. But I don't know. I'm hopeful. Maybe it'll come out someday. But it doesn't seem that way.
Well, we promised that we would raise the Brie Larson question.
Everybody hates Brie.
So you know why that is?
Okay, so I was reading, and you know, as one does when you work in a library, not as much as advertised, but so I was reading up on it, and maybe you know something about it that I don't. So what I understood is that she was using her platform as like celebrity with the attention of Captain Marvel coming out to talk about social issues, and people were like, no, you may not, sit down, like we don't talk about that here. And maybe I'm reading it wrong, but like I also remember there being some controversy where people were like, Brie, you're a privileged white woman, like what do you have to complain about? Smile, you'll be prettier if you try, you know. And I wonder if I remember something about somebody saying like, you can't use this platform in this way because you're a white woman of privilege. And she was like, I'll step down. Like, I will stop being Captain Marvel, like, right now. If there is somebody of color or from a different background or whatever that you would rather have representing this cause, but, like, the cause needs to be represented. And I don't know. I don't know why everybody hated Brie. The review that I read It didn't have an author listed. It was like an initials and then a last name or something. And they were what they said in 3 different places in this article was she didn't smile enough.
Didn't they miss the point of the movie?
That hurt me. It hurt me. Like, 2 things that I never ever want to be told by somebody is smile and calm down. Like, no. Those are not 2 things that I'm about. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, it's I don't know who she is as a person. Maybe she is unlikable, but that doesn't matter. It's like I think she plays the role very well. I've been happy with her portrayal, and I think we do hold our actresses to certain standards of you have to be likable in a way that we don't hold our actors to.
Oh yeah. When an actress is vocal or when an actress is trying to advocate for something, she's not of color enough. She is not, your mama was an actress. You don't know what it is to struggle. Like there's always something wrong there. But, when Charlie Sheen, however, is Charlie Sheen, we are entertained by it. We're like maybe a little worried at best, but like, he's doing the Bachelor life. And like no woman would be allowed to sheen. Like no woman ever would be allowed to sheen. We would be like, oh, sorry, oops a daisy. Like we forgot to include your clip, honey. Maybe you should try next year. So one of my I stopped watching Walking Dead. I will go ahead and cop to. I do not have the most current information on the show. The reason why I stopped watching it is the thing that you mentioned earlier is the men gave me my power thing. They spin Carol in The Walking Dead as this character who she's self-sufficient. When I tuned out, she was living in like a little house outside of the kingdom where the tiger lives or whatever. Once they introduce tigers into zombie shows, I go, no, thank you. But, so Carol, Carol's role in the show got to a point where her acceptance into this, that, or the other community strictly depended on whether or not she had a kid to take care of. And it wasn't even subtle. It was her character arc. And that hurt me. Like, I don't need that in a zombie show. And I get that The Walking Dead is like the days of our lives of zombie shows, but like, I feel like I have some kind of ownership over it because I'm a comic book person, and so like it's outside of the campy zombie movie vein because like it's kind of for nerds, it's not just blood and guts. It's kind of for nerds because we read it too. What do you think about that trope that people use with the like her being awesome is a product of abuse? Because we've talked about it with Harley Quinn as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I'm sure there are examples of this not being the case, but more often than not, it's because of male writers who haven't taken the time to question their own biases about gender. It's like, okay, well, it's a female character. She must be obsessed with having kids, or she must, or one of the biggest offenders is if she's going on her period, then she must be out of her mind. You
can't elect us for anything, like, just in case, just in case we get murderous every 28 days, like, watch out.
I mean, and it's uncomfortable that we still have this issue because we should have been past it a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
Now, one question that I want to throw out there, just as kind of a positive takeaway, is things are changing. They may be slower than we'd like, but we are seeing some. We're seeing more female directors, and we're seeing more of an influence that is doing correct things. What is an example of something that you feel we as a collective nerd unit are doing correctly?
So, nothing. I do feel like, so like I did kind of slam Umbrella Academy, but I super loved so first of all, I started that series because Gerard Way wrote them. And like my little black bleeding Trip Jean wearing heart absolutely adores Gerard for everything he is. And so there's another female character in Umbrella Academy, Vanya, and her powers do not surface when the others do, right? And it's not clear in the beginning, like, is she a late bloomer, or like maybe Hargreaves just like picked a runt for the litter or something. But later you find out that she did have powers. She did have powers, but they were so strong and they were so dangerous that they had the rumor like convince her that she wasn't special. And I love the underlying tones of that, because later the rumor is in an accident and she loses her voice. So kind of like character, what's his name in First Class? He flies, but like really it's because he's pitchy.
Is it Angel? Or
no.
Yeah.
Anyway. Banshee?
Banshee, okay.
So she's in an accident, and like Banshee, when she loses her voice, she loses her power. Like, can't do nothing with that. And so the one thing that they did right, like through the translation into TV, is they really captured that sisterhood bond that then happens. Like, Vanya finds out. Like, she finds out what happened and that her sister did this to her, and that she spent her entire life feeling not special because of rumor abusing her power. And Vanya is kind of the only person left behind to take care of rumor when she's hurt. And so, like, I thought that they captured really well. Like, I have a sister, and you know, I talk about her at work a lot because she's my bestest buddy in the whole world. But it is not always Elsa and Anna and let's get through this with our feelings together. Like, sometimes it's ugly, and it's okay for it to be ugly. Like, we don't have to be best buddies just because we're kinfolk, you know? And I really love that they did that in Umbrella Academy, and that they really stood on that a lot, is that bond of not being cool with each other. And I liked it because it's not polite, and it's real, and it's bloody, and I love it. What do you think they did right?
Okay, one of the moments that I think sort of sums up a lot of what I think the direction that we're going, it was in the Patty Jenkins Wonder Woman. It was right at the end when Steve Trevor is on the plane, he's about to sacrifice himself, and he points the gun back at the explosives. He pauses, and I really felt like in the hands of a male director, this would have been bravado. It would have been, "This is for you, Diana," and he would have, gone out singing. And the fact that they just took this time to show how terrified he is and how he's dealing with the fact, I'm about to end my life here. That brings in an emotional gray area to a lot of these things that we usually think of as it's either this or that.
Showing vulnerability in male characters is something that common directors, they have a hard time doing that. They have a really hard time. At best, Bruce Wayne is going to be like, has PTSD. Like, that's the best that we get. And that's a war sickness, And, I do think that showing vulnerability in male characters and like showing that they need the support of what was formerly just their co-star. Yeah, I think those are really great points. We're getting close on time, aren't we?
Yeah, it's 4:45, so I'm sure they're probably going to be. I saw Justin pop in earlier, I think, to see if we were
He's
still
going to
going.
come dashing into my room with a red flag. Stop it!
No!
Well, I am so glad that we had this time to talk. It's been super fun. Super fun. You know, I always enjoy talking about comic books with you, and I always super enjoy your perspective on things, Sean, and I'm just so glad that you agreed to do this with me today.
I'm glad that you had your first panel. So that's the fun thing about this festival is we get to kind of experiment with different programming ideas and learn new things.
I have absolutely loved this Sci-Fi Fest. Usually when Hoover Library is putting on our Sci-Fi Fest, like everybody who works here, like you just see us as blurs while we're doing stuff and like trying to make things happen. And I've gotten to experience more of the fest this year than ever before. And so I've had a really wonderful time with this. And you know, we really appreciate everybody who's been tuning in to Sci-Fi Fantasy Fest and kind of participating with us and just kind of being patient with us. And you know, we're all experiencing this new world together. So we're better together. Yay.
Thank you, everybody who joined us. Marie says you're amazing, Sam. She offers me no feedback at all. But yeah, just always have fun on these panels. And thank you for joining us. And if you're joining us after the fact, then thank you for doing that too.
Yep. Like, share, check out Hoover Library, visit us whenever you want.